It's WG bringing you SMB, and everybody is always asking for team comps. So I decided to make this video in pretty much showing you or giving you an idea how to build the perfect teams. First off, you cannot quite build a perfect team because, for example, what works in story, what works in tower, what works in hard mode doesn't necessarily translate into arena, or it doesn't necessarily translate over into the gear rates or the Tomb of the Fallen, right? But these are pretty much the teams that work pretty much in most, like 90% plus of content. So let's have a look at these, and also the way you read this is like the best version, and then you have your replacements right here. Let's start with the first one. Why would you ever considering replacing Acapella? So if you go into a fight and in that fight you're either not going to have the time, or in general you're just not going to use Acapella's ult, then you can swap Acapella out. Because what Acapella does without her ult is pretty much nothing. So if you don't ult with an Acapella, the only thing she does is a slight bit of damage with her basic attack, but you might as well put something else in that is a bit more effective, like for example a Dalcalo, who still has her DOTs, her extra damage, or even a Nadina who can heal based on basic attacks, or I guess a Seth too, so like running a Steroid Iona and a Seth. But yeah, that's the reason why there's even replacements below Acapella. So it's not that she's unreplaceable, it's just there is certain situations where you'll not get the opportunity to use Acapella's ult, and in those scenarios you can then consider swapping her out. The second row is just dedicated to tanks. There's at the end of the day only like 5 premier choices, you could say. I guess we could even move this just down a bit. So the way you have to look at this is pretty much you have Bella as like the primary tank. Bella really good at tanking physical damage, and the reason why she's good at tanking physical damage is because of the fact that she has her summons, so she doesn't get aggroed, she can stun, and she can also summon a distraction. Then you got Transcendent Amy as like the second option, or even the equal option, it depends on your perspective. Overall, Transcendent Amy tends to be better at blocking magic damage. The same is true for Friedrich, so Chia, Amy and Friedrich could be potential replacements for a Bella, especially if you're sick of her voice, which is something I do hear quite a lot. If you do decide to replace a Bella, make sure you take also Cecia out, because if you're not running a Bella, you also shouldn't really be running a Cecia as much. Then the discussion between Friedrich and Theophane, they are, you could say, polar opposites of each other. Friedrich provides himself a shield and a bigger shield with ultimate, while Theophane provides a shield to everybody as well as also a heal to himself. So the same is also true for their damage reductions. Friedrich naturally gains magic damage reduction, while Theophane gains physical damage reduction. Jester on the other hand too, Jester is also pretty good at resisting physical damage. So that is row 2. Now we have row 3. Steroid Iona, the prime time healer. Once you get her ultimate going for that second time, you start to actually get some healing, and then you also have a first ultimate with the shield just to tank some hits and also replays. But just from a healing perspective, Seth is going to be superior. So Seth and Steroid Iona are pretty much the prime choices for that healer slot. And then if you don't have a Steroid Iona or a Seth, or you just need some extra healing power, and Adina and Iona can also work well. Like really the healer options as of this moment are quite limited. Like outside of those 4, I don't think there's anything besides maybe the rare healer, right? So that brings us to the what I would like to call the DPS row. So Lamia, just being the strongest unit in the game, does have her place there, but if you either don't have her leveled up as much, or you don't want to use her, or for whatever reason, you can also replace a Lamia, for example, for a Transcendent Hati, and let's say a Cecia for a Dalcalo, especially once again, if you're not running a Bella, make sure you get rid of that Cecia. So these are all like kind of interchangeable. Like for example, you could be running Transcendent Hati and Van Helsing, Thibault and Noah, Gilrain and Noah, Noah and Van Helsing, Noah and Dalcalo. I hope you get the deal, but the prime formula stays the same. A support / off healer in Acapella or Dalcalo, or even Adina and Iona, a tank, a dedicated healer, and then 2 damage dealers that either have the capabilities to do some single target damage, or even the ability to do both in Lamia, and then more of a AoE / just other type of DPS. So that is the meta team. That is what gets you the most success, you could say. And those are the potential replacements. Now, everybody always wants to know, what do I do with the DOT team? So DOT teams, as of this moment, you could say they don't really exist, but if you want to make it happen, you definitely do need a Transcendent Hati, because otherwise there just isn't enough synergy between DOT units. Otherwise it's just another form of damage, because Transcendent Hati is the only one that actually interacts with DOTs and can make those explode for some extra burst damage. And then the way this would look like is either Acapella, Bella, Sterid, Aeona, Daikalo, and Tihati, which should be the most solid team formation, or the ability to replace Acapella with a Daikalo, adding in another DOT with the stun, with the support, with the increased damage taken, and then putting something like a Darcius, Nicole, or even Agaris in place of this Daikalo when you're running her over here. So what that then allows you to do is have 2 different providers for DOTs, or even 3. So Transcendent Hati provides DOT, then you would have, for example, Darcius provide the DOT and also Daikalo, so that's 3. Or what you could also do if you really want to focus on DOTs is run a Darcius instead of a Bella, so that you have 2 fighters rather than a tank to kind of split the load when it comes to tanking. So you would have a Transcendent Hati and a Darcius to split the load when it comes to tanking. Or even what you could also try is running a Darcius, Transcendent Hati, and Nicole. So in that case, you would have 3 units that can kind of like split the enemies, and if you have good enough AoE healing, you should be able to work on keeping these alive. But then again, there isn't quite yet a like dedicated place or need for a DOT team as a whole, right? But just so you know that it does exist. It is to a degree, you could say, possible, and it would look something similar to this. Next up, I always get asked, what about a summon team? Alright, now for a summon team, you see it's pretty much the same ground formula, but if you are playing a summon team, you should also be running Bella. Bella, because of the ability to heal her summons based on her max HP, which obviously is true for every single summon. So if you are or intend to run a summon team, you should by all means be running a Bella as your tank for that synergy. Then instead of Acapella, you could once again put in a Daikalo just for more damage, bit more support, bit more utility. Or you could also be using a Piera instead of an Acapella. Just know that you might just get one shot out of nowhere without like any dedicated healing source. And that is because also Piera, she would just be raw damage at the end of the day. And if you don't use her ult, she doesn't do a whole lot, which is why she's kind of like off to the side here, just so you know what's really going on. And then we have like the core of the summon team, you could say, in Transcendent Noah, who's just the strongest summoner at the moment. And he would benefit from the Bella healing for his summons, as well as also benefit from the Cisia, where Cisia naturally boosts the damage of summons. So a perfect summoner team as of this moment would probably look something like Piera, Bella, Steroid, Transcendent Noah, Transcendent, and then Cisia. So the reason why Cisia obviously again interacts with Bella, if you have the 4 summons out, which wouldn't even necessarily need a Bella, now that you also have a Noah in there, you would pretty much be able to just ult with her without having to consider to ult with a Bella. And then you have the increased damage, the healing, the increased speed, and then just the strongest summoner in the game, right? That's kind of like the philosophy about it. And then also you could like turn back a bit on the summon aspects and just put in someone strong like a Lamia. Or, yeah, I mean, Lamia, she just pretty much fits into every single team, right? You could technically also replace Acapella with Lamia, right? So just to give you like an idea of a summon team. And then this team is even less complete than the DOT or the summon team, but it is a team that you could look at nonetheless, and that is the synergy of stuns. So we have Joanne, who can apply induction. If you have 8 stacks of induction, it turns into a stun. You have Triss, who also applies induction, same principle. You have then 2 sources of induction, and then you also have a Selena. So Selena actually improves her ultimate every time someone gets stunned. So if a stun happens, Selena's ultimate becomes even stronger. And then you could use that to kind of like play around with the concept of a stun team. And that is why you would then have kind of like Joanne as your main tank, then Selena and Triss, or potentially something like a Hati or Geraint in there, because again, Hati and Geraint have the ability to also apply stuns with their ultimate, so that would be an extra source. But it's to a degree, you could say, as of this moment, pretty incomplete. But whenever there's like a need for us to build around stuns, because I don't know, stuns tend to provide big damage boost in a certain event, this might become relevant. But for now, there's still a couple pieces lacking, in the same way that you probably should also run Joanne as one of these damage slots rather than the tank, because it's just one melee unit and she's probably gonna get eaten up like there is no tomorrow. So for the last couple bit, I kind of want to like talk about I thought about showing you like a physical damage team and a magical damage team, but those don't really have like any direct applications. Like I could show you or tell you the best physical and the best magical damage units, but it really depends on what you're facing. Like for example, also in this whole video you haven't really seen Incendiary Agares, but that's not because he just couldn't slot into a slot right here. Like he could replace Dakalu, he could replace CC, he could be replacing Lamia. It's just that most of his strong suits also purely or mostly do shine in PvP, so that's where he's going to be really good at. Also, if you were wondering, where is Lemine? Lemine also obviously does have a space in any of these teams, in any of these slots. These are pretty much, to a degree, just examples of the units that just fit the best and tend to give the most results. And also, like most of the time, it's either like Arena or the Time Worn Mausoleum, or maybe the Tomb of the Fallen, where certain units really do shine. Like for example, Lemine is ridiculous in the Time Worn Mausoleum, while for example Incendiary Agares does really nasty stuff in PvP. So yeah, I hope this video helped you out and kind of gave you what you were looking for. And yeah, we'll obviously try to further improve the teams, and if there's like the need for dedicated content with dedicated teams, you know for sure you're going to get that. Peace!